So another thing that I want to show you guys is router split. So go to Google or your browser, type in GitHub router split, and it's the first one, router split exploitation framework. And this is used to test the security of your router. It'll let you know if there's any vulnerabilities, and it'll even tell you what the exploits are in order to exploit that router. Now, in order to hack a router or exploit a router that's vulnerable, one would have to already have access to your home Wi-Fi network or your Wi-Fi network or whatever the Wi-Fi network that you're on, because obviously your internet comes from a router, right? You have to have a router. So the only way to access the router is by being connected to the Wi-Fi signal. So the attacker would first have to gain access to your Wi-Fi network, and then from there they would scan the network, they would see your router, and then they would target and attack your router with router split to see if there's a vulnerability that they can exploit, get into your router. Once they get into your router, they can control your traffic, they can sniff your traffic, they can downgrade it to HTTP, so that way when you type in passwords, they can be logged. HTTPS stops that from happening. It's a security protocol. That's why there's HTTPS, and that's why you might see sometimes like HTTP, oh, your connection is not secure, and if you type in your credentials, they could be captured, blah, blah, blah. That's because of HTTP is not a secure. Are you in here? Are you waiting for this room? Oh, okay. Sorry, I wasn't sure if you. Anyway, so as I was saying, yeah, so they would have to already have access to your Wi-Fi network in order to attack your router. But this is how they would do it. So let's have a look. I already have router split. So I'm going to make two videos. One showing how router split works, and then another video for my paid members of my Patreon, how to install it and how to use it. Now there is install instructions here. If you already have Kali Linux going and whatever you're looking for a tool to test the security of your router, this is the tool. If you already know what you're doing in Kali Linux, then have at it, do your thing. But let's have a look. So it consists of various modules that aid penetration testing operations. Exploits, modules that take advantage of identified vulnerabilities. Creds, modules designed to test credentials against network services. So it'll automatically try and test default credentials to try to log into the router, and then it'll tell you if those credentials work. Scanners, modules that can check if a target is vulnerable to any exploit. Payloads, modules that are responsible for generating payloads for various architectures and injection points. Generic, modules to perform generic attacks. Okay, now let's open up a terminal. I've already installed it, so I'm just going to start it by typing in router split. That's going to start the tool up. Most tools you can't just type in the name of it and run it. You have to either know how to run it using Bash or Python or something of that nature, but sometimes you get the easy route, and that's if you have it installed, which you probably don't. So use scanners/autopwn. Oops, what am I doing wrong? Oh, scanners, not scanner. See what I mean? Use scanners, not scanner, or else it's not going to work. Boom, that worked. Now, we're using the exploit that basically just automatically tests every single exploit and vulnerability against the router. So now we're going to set the target, and it's going to be the IP address of your router, which you can find that by downloading an app called Fing, Fing, and you can scan your network using Fing. Fing is the name of the app. It'll scan your Wi-Fi network, and one of the devices on the network will be your router, and it's usually the IP address is usually 192.168.0.1 or 192.168.1.1. That's usually um, the router's IP address, but it can vary. So you need to use Fing, scan your network. The first device usually is the first or last device is usually the router. So in my case, which is a weird case, because I'm using a public library, um, or sorry, a public Wi-Fi network similar to a library's setup, and they use different security. They use a different network setup. So that's why I have an IP address of 172.168.1.1. That's the router's IP address. On this network, usually the IP address doesn't look like that. Okay, it's green. It said it worked. Target. Now run. Now this is literally testing every single vulnerability and exploit against that router. We're trying to find it. Now the blue means it's not quite sure if that exploit is going to work or not. Could not be verified. But if you see green, if you see a little green one, that means one of them works. And at the end of this scan, it'll display the ones that work, the exploits and vulnerabilities that work, mostly the exploits. It'll tell you, hey, we tried to log in with the default credentials and it worked. Here's the default credentials. Or it'll say, hey, we scanned all these exploits against your router and we found this one and this one work. And they're going to be highlighted green instead of blue or red. Now, so far it looks like it hasn't found any vulnerabilities in this router or exploits. Now there is usually one exploit that literally always shows green, but doesn't always work. And the way that you use exploits, once you find an exploit, the way you use exploits is through MSF console. MSF console. That's a whole nother video on its own. But in Kali Linux, how you would look for and use real exploits to literally, hack into things is through MSF console, Metasploit framework. You can Google it, look it up, whatever. But that's the big beast, but that's more advanced. You're not on that level yet. You don't need to worry about that yet. So anyways, it's trying to do its thing with router split. Sometimes it gets stuck. Sometimes networks will block pings and scans like that. So it might even stop in the middle of its process and not continue, which means that your router is secure. Your at least the router is secure. Now that's in the aspect of vulnerabilities and exploits. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that your router is all the way secure, because I guarantee you that you're still using the default credentials on your router. So 10 times out of 10, every time that, say for example, like some of my friends, they would give me permission to try and hack their Wi-Fi. And what I would do is I would get into their Wi-Fi. I would hack their Wi-Fi, and then I would get into their router. And how usually it's rare that you'll find an exploit. I have found one before and got in the router that way, which is the more unlikely route. But everybody uses the default credentials for the router. So I just get on the Wi-Fi, I find the router IP address, I type it into the browser, it brings me to the login of the router, and then I Google the name of that router, and because it'll show a login screen, and it'll say ASUS, or it'll say, Kojiko or Telus or whatever it says. I'll just type that in, and then I'll type default credentials, right? And then I'll look and it'll show me. It'll be like admin, admin, or admin password, or admin1234. Literally, it's the stupidest thing ever. Like, default credentials, insane. First thing you should do when you get your Wi-Fi set up is change the default credentials for the router password. Maybe not the Wi-Fi password, because the Wi-Fi password is usually pretty secure. What they give you with your router, it's a string of letters and numbers, which is what you want. You don't want normal words like password, or like, I love cats or something like that, because I'll show you later. I've already made a video about how the 3 different ways where you can hack Wi-Fi, but that's not what this is about. This is about the router, not the Wi-Fi, even though that they're related. Um, yeah, so this is about the router. So anyways, like I said, it found the one exploit. Device is vulnerable to this exploit. And what I would do is I would go over here and I would do search, type the name of this exploit. Okay, that didn't work, so then I will just take just the end, the name of the exploit, which is the moon underscore RCE. Couldn't find that either. That's weird. Then I'll just try the moon. Okay, I found it. So it just has a different type of a name now. But this is the exploit right here. So now I would type in use, go to this exploit, show options, and it would show me the options to use this. Now let me have a look. Okay, so it wants me to set the R host. Now you don't have to worry about this, but I'm just showing you. This is the process of exploiting a router. It showed us a vulnerability, and now we want to exploit it to get into the router. That's assuming we're already on the Wi-Fi network. This is how this works, okay? This is how an attacker would get on your Wi-Fi, then get on your router. Now they have full control over your network. They can kick you off, change the password, block devices, downgrade to HTTP, get all your passwords, get all your logins, sniff all your traffic. You're totally compromised. Everything, your entire digital private life is compromised. And they could be sitting there for months doing this. They could have everything. They could own you completely, have access to your Gmail and your documents that you uploaded to your Gmail or that you sent via email, your ID, it's crazy. So anyways, set our hosts to the IP address of the router. Set the L port to 8080. I guess I'll try that. And this most likely is not going to work. Every time I try this exploit, it doesn't work. It always says that, hey, your router is vulnerable to this exploit, but it never works. I mean, it could work, but it usually doesn't. So show targets. There you go. So we have a Linux. So we got 2 different payloads that we're going to try here. We're using 0. So then right now it's on 0. So we'll type in run. And of course that failed. Oh, already in use. Okay, so our port 8080 is already in use, and that's from earlier. So let's do 443 because that's another trusted port. But that's also SSL, so that might not work too. But anyways, you don't have to worry about that. Anyways, so I'm typing run, and this is acting as if it's trying to get a reverse shell onto the router, which it most likely won't. And it's created this URL, which I believe that um, you have to send to the admin or the person that runs the Wi-Fi network. They click it, and then it gives you the shell onto the router or something. I don't know how this exploit exactly works, but I just know it never works. This specific exploit. I'll even try to set targets to the other one, number one, unknown. Oh, I meant set target, not targets. Set target. Run. It's not compatible with that type of payload. So there you go. So we failed. That did not work. This router is secure in that aspect, but you might want to change your default credentials to your router by logging into your router with the default credentials and then changing the router password, not the Wi-Fi password, the router password. There's a difference. So anyways, that's how you use RouterSploit to test the security of your router. You can also use it to test your Wi-Fi webcam. Like if you have a home system with Wi-Fi cameras, if you know the IP address, which you can scan with Fing, find the IP address to your IP Wi-Fi camera, and you can put that IP in here, run the same test to see if there's any vulnerabilities to your camera where somebody could get in if they have access to your network already, and then they can gain access to your IP Wi-Fi cameras. Believe it or not, they can also attack your router with deauthentication packets and knock your Wi-Fi cameras off the Wi-Fi signal, stopping the recording, and then break into your house, steal all your shit, leave, and then nobody will ever know what happened because they stopped the recording of your Wi-Fi cameras. So that's another thing that I can do. I can show you guys how to do that. And you can do that too using Airgeddon, which I'm going to make another video showing how to install Airgeddon. I've already made a video how to use Airgeddon and how to hack Wi-Fi in 3 different ways, and how to secure your network so that way you cannot be hacked in those 3 different ways. And there is only 3 ways to hack into somebody's Wi-Fi, and you can block all 3 of those ways. That's why I educate people. That's why I make these videos. That's why I encourage you to join my Patreon as a paid member, not a free member, a paid member. And when you do, I'll be showing you how to do all this stuff and learn all this stuff and use it to your advantage. So you don't have to just be running around with your head cut off thinking you're compromised from everything and not know how to actually figure it out. See it, remove access, and take back control over your network and over your devices. You don't have to live in fear. You can live in power through knowledge. So, anyways, done deal.